بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Guys, we did not do last week, but we are catching up this week, inshallah. We're going to be talking a little bit about revival, right? The book that we shared last time was titled An-Nahda, which translates to revival. It's Noon, Ha, Dad. And I'm going to share my screen so you guys can just get a little look at the book, because I did mention it's not like you have to read the book to show up over here. In fact, without showing up over here, without reading the book at all, will still give you a general understanding of what the book talks about. So you can just attend these sessions. It'll probably take us 3 different sessions to complete the book, and you can walk out knowing all of the main points of the book. Sure, you might not be a better reader at the end of it. You might not understand it comprehensively, but you'll still have a general understanding. For those that do want to go above and beyond, go to that next step, then reading is a good thing. It'll help you with your computation. Of course, reading is linked to a really good memory, repairing your attention span, many benefits to reading. And most importantly, your ideas are meshed out, comprehensive, and have a sense of originality. Anybody that reads knows that you go on so many tangents when you're reading, right? It's like, oh, the author said this, and you got this different idea that comes to your mind, and you're almost playing this game of detective with the author. You guys are bouncing ideas off of each other. Regardless, I'm going to share my screen, inshallah, so you guys can see the book. For those watching the recording, you should be able to see it as well. Okay, so the book is titled An-Nahda, Al-Ustad Hafid Salih, Farid Muhammad Salih Al-Ghanim, rahimahullah ta'ala. He, just about the author, he's obviously Arab in origin. I believe he was born and raised in Jordan or Palestine. Born in Palestinian village over here, you can see. 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, he enters the da'wah. He meets up with many big, scholars, Sheikh Taqiyuddin Nabhani, Sheikh Abu Yusuf, or Abdul Qadim Zaloom, better known as, stuff like that. He meets many scholars, essentially. And he develops his ideas. He is very prominent, very popular. And on the book, it says he at one point leads 40 halaqas a week. I heard from one of his students that he actually used to teach 60 halaqas a week. Can you imagine 60 halaqas every week? Imagine you every day having like 9 different halaqat. 9. Think about that, every single day. This is sort of the level we're talking about people operate. And unfortunately today, when we don't have people like this that we can look up to, we become complacent. We become lazy. Our standards are dirt poor. So this is an opportunity for us to reignite our passions, put our standards higher than they were perhaps before joining this call, inshallah. And most importantly, to take from the immense experience this Sheikh has from his quest around the Muslim world. So the first 40 pages, what is he really talking about? Okay. It talks about one fundamental problem within the Muslim world. Okay. Now I give this my own name. I call it the problem of perpetual crisis. Okay, this is a term I use myself. You probably won't, like, if you try Googling it, you won't find this, but it just helps paint the idea. The problem of perpetual crisis. Let's write that down over here. Let's have a notepad open. You guys can see my notepad, right? Say yes in the chat if you see it. Anybody see this notepad? See what I'm typing? Or do you just see the internet thing? The book? Oh, you just see the book, eh? There we go. Now you should be able to see both, correct? The book and the notepad. Okay, alhamdulillah. So the problem of perpetual crisis. What is the author talking about in this introduction? Why is this book over here? Why are we talking about revival? What is the need? Revival, if you guys know what revival means, it necessitates deterioration. There is no such thing as revival when there is no deterioration. Okay? Revival only happens when something or a part of something deteriorates or destroys or gets ruined or becomes old or becomes, broken. When these things happen, then the revival can take place. If something's perfectly fine, there's no such thing as revival. There's no such thing as fixing. There's no such thing as a renewal. Like, these things don't exist. So just in the term itself, it has a prerequisite. The idea that we talk about revival means that prerequisite to that, there was something that destroyed it, something that deteriorated it, perhaps. And so this is what we're talking about. The problem of perpetual crisis is the deterioration or the downfall or the destruction of the Muslim Ummah. And it highlights as such: we, as an Ummah, have the greatest natural resources ever. Okay, what do we mean by that? Anybody know what I mean by that? What is the most valuable natural resource today in the world? Let me ask you guys that real quick. What is the number one most valuable natural resource on Earth? Oil. Okay, X said oil. I'm just gonna call you X because there's nothing else on your name. All right, that's correct. Furqan. Okay, I'll just call you Furqan. MashaAllah, may Allah bless you. Oil. Correct. It is the most valuable natural resource. Let me actually even show you guys my Google Slides over here. I made Google Slides on this once. Think of other resources we have as an Ummah. What else do we have? Okay, you guys see this, right? All right. We have the global trade choke points. So we talked about oil. They're all primarily found in Muslim countries, right? The most valuable natural resource, we said, is primarily found in Muslim countries. Oil, most valuable natural resource. We have, what else do we have as an ummah in our Muslim countries? Biggest reserves of precious metals. And by the way, the oils, if you search up the most valuable, like the biggest oil reserves on the planet, the top 5 biggest oil reserves on the planet, they'll all be in Muslim countries, other than Venezuela, which is in South America. All of them are in Muslim countries. We have oil, especially in the Gulf countries. Biggest reserves of precious metal. Okay, we have this as well. What else do we have? We have 6 of the 9 global trade choke points. Technically 7. Okay, because South Africa, it was only recently became Christian majority. So South Africa technically would have been in our lands as well. But look, what do we mean by trade choke points? These are places on Earth where what do you call it? Material resources must travel through. There's no other way around it. They have to travel through these points. They're way too heavy to fly on planes. So flying these resources is not an option. You can't drive continent to continent because they're separated by water. So boats, we have to use boats when it comes to these large quantities of material and sail on water. And so these trade choke points are places these boats need to pass through. In the Muslim world right now, we have 6 of the 9 trade choke points of the world. Meaning, if the Muslims united instantaneously, almost 70% of all of the supply and demand in the world is completely in our control. Just like that. We cut it off wherever we want. We open it wherever we want. We allow what we want. We disallow what we want. That's what we have. Geographical supremacy. What else? What else? We can keep going on. Who has the best birth rates in the world? Muslim countries, right? Who is recognized for having the best laws? Of course. We're not talking, they're not Islamic countries. Of course, they use secular laws and structures and stuff like that. But if you look at, for example, I think Andrew Tate became popular early on. He said, "Oh, in Dubai, you can leave your $100,000 on top of your supercar, and nobody will take it." Stuff like that. There's barely any crime. They don't enslave you with taxes, right? Stuff like that. Who is growing quicker than any other ideology? Muslims, fastest growing religion, right? We've seen Pew Research publish their articles on Islam outgrowing Christianity by 2050. Who has the greatest manpower? Primarily, yeah. So manpower, we mean the young working class between the ages of 20 to 40 or 20 to 50, maybe even. Who knows? It's primarily Muslim. In fact, I saw one of Nouman Khan's lectures where he said for the first time in a very long time, I don't know where he got the research from, but he did mention it. So, and I think he's at least a little bit trusted, at least when it comes to references. Because as a big speaker, he can get cancelled so easily. So he needs to know what he's talking about, at least, hopefully, inshallah. And he did mention that we are, for the first time in a very long time, a primarily young ummah. That we are, most of the ummah right now is under 40 and under, which is very surprising. Actually, not very surprising once you see everything that happened after the war on terror and the bombing and killing of Muslims ever since 2001, 2003. But what am I getting at over here? What am I getting at? We have so many an'am from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sorry, not an'am. The ni'mah. The ni'mah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. Think about it. It's insane what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Most of the manpower aren't capable. Unfortunately, they're just lying around, not strategizing, not uniting, not working as a single force. Do you see this? SubhanAllah. Zakat. Good Lord. How much zakat are we paying as an ummah? We've seen National Zakat Foundation released last year. Do you guys remember? Type it in the chat. How much zakat is being paid by Muslims across the world every single year? In 1 year, how much zakat is being paid? If you don't know, give a guess. Shoot it in the chat. We did this already once before, but some of you might not have been here. How much zakat do you think? Just zakat. We're not talking sadaqah. We're not talking charity. We're not talking anything. It's not in the trillions. Yeah. Okay, billions. Is it in the millions? Millions of dollars? It's not in the millions. It's actually in the billions of dollars. It's, believe it or not, over 600 billion US dollars. I'm in Canada. That's well over 800 billion Canadian. That's almost 1 trillion Canadian. In 1 year. In 1 year. This is National Zakat Foundation worked with the World Bank to survey these statistics, which are off. We know it's not perfect. We know their methods of surveillance do not account for people who pay zakat to relatives, which is a large portion of zakat, by the way, especially if you guys are from the subcontinent like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We know, like our relatives and families back home, we pay them zakat. We send them money over and stuff like that, right? The Arabs do it less so from what I understand. They didn't even account for that. They can't account for that really, because it doesn't travel through as zakat. All that comes out on their systems is as just a wire transfer from Canada to India or something, right? So this can be an underestimate. Now, what if we counted the sadaqah? What if? And this isn't far-fetched. Definitely billion. We'd be in the trillions, brother. If we counted the sadaqah and the rest of the zakat, we'd be over 1 trillion. We'd definitely be over 1 trillion. Maybe 2 trillion, 3 trillion. Wallahu alam. The illusion of growth is bad. We have billions, but still Westerns rule us. British conquered subcontinent despite being the one with less population. The earlier Muslims didn't have numbers, but they had quality. Today we have quantity, but not much quality. This is what we're getting at. May Allah bless brother. What's your real name? I don't want to just shout out usernames. I don't want to say brother boring over here, because we have Furqan over here. We have okay, brother Noor, brother Furqan. What about Smiley Face? What's your real name? Adonis. Okay. MashaAllah. Allah yahfadukum. So, despite having these great natural resources, what do we have? We have what happening in Palestine. Yahfadullahu lahum. Alhamdulillah for the ceasefire. May Allah protect them, preserve them, grant them steadfastness against their opponents. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. 75 years. We have billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. Year by year. We have 6 of the 9 global trade choke points. We have oil, the most valuable natural resource on earth, primarily in our lands. We have the precious metals. And yet, over 75 years, Palestine has been occupied, having some of the worst atrocities against human beings committed in there by these Zionist pigs. We haven't been able to stop it. We haven't been able to stop it. Aden. Okay, mashallah. India. India's forming another open-air prison right now. You see the videos coming out. You be a street vendor in India, you have to put the Indian flag and have to have idols on your thing, or else the government takes your legit. You're just a civilian on the street. You just have your own cart, and if there's no idols and there's not the Indian flag on it, they take your stuff. They confiscate it just off the street. You have to be a polytheist nationalist Indian to have a peaceful life, apparently. And that's talking about we're talking Delhi, Bombay, these places. If you go to the rural areas in India, a'udhu billah, the worst stuff. Children getting kidnapped, raped, the elderly getting killed, lynched. We're not talking we're not talking sanitized killing here. We're talking literal sticks and beating them to death. Filthy stuff. And that's what we mean. It's all forming another open-air prison. The rural areas are all being surrounded by lynch mobs, and then the central areas, they're being ideologically forced to compromise. That's what's happening to Muslims in India. Yemen. What happened to Yemen? The Prophet ﷺ made so much dua for it. He made so much praise of the people of Yemen. And what has the Ummah done for them? Except let them fall deeper and deeper into the worst humanitarian crisis as categorized by Amnesty International on earth. The worst humanitarian categorized by the kuffar, who have nothing to stand on. They say the worst humanitarian crisis on earth is Yemen. 19 million. Imagine, like Gaza, not to downplay what's happened in Gaza, but what are the numbers? 70,000, 80,000 killed in Gaza? May Allah accept them as shuhada. We're talking the tens of thousands, maybe 100,000, 200,000, if you account for the people that are under the rubble, account for the people that are missing, stuff like that. We're talking tens of millions in Yemen. Tens of millions starving to death. If you guys watch my YouTube videos, you see, like, subhanAllah, the amount of footage I put. You know, I censor some of it and I pick the easier ones to put on there. I've had to sit through hours of footage going through what's happening in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq. Imagine if it was you. Imagine if it was your children. Day by day, they don't grow old because they're starving from malnutrition. This happening in millions. This isn't 10, this isn't 100, this isn't even 100,000. This is 19 million. 34, half of them are under 15. Under 15. And what has the ummah done, mashallah, with their great resources, with their trade choke points, with their hundreds of billions of dollars in zakat, with their oil, the control over the oil? Nothing. You know, I don't want to be sort of nihilistic here. And would we not be questioned regarding this on the Day of Judgment? Exactly. Exactly. We're monsters, standing by and watching some of the most atrocious and disgusting things happening before our eyes. Syria. Of course, we've seen what happened in Syria. And, you know, may Allah protect them now with their new government. 300,000 civilians dead. Dead. 300,000. 14 million displaced from their homes. Iraq, right? You have the grand sheikh of these Salafis, Ibn Baz, Sheikh Ibn Baz. You know, I don't mean to mock him in any way or something like that, but they hold him to such a high standard. Sheikh Ibn Baz, if he says a fatwa, it is one of the greatest fatawa that in the ummah, and nobody should question him because he has the most knowledge. What was his fatwa in 1991 regarding Iraq? The Saudi clergy allowing American troops to settle in Saudi Arabia, to go ahead and take over Iraq against the Soviets. Without this fatwa, it wouldn't have happened. Without this fatwa, the people would have been in an uproar for a single soldier coming in. But if there's a fatwa, what can we say now? The ulama have spoken. They said it's halal to have the enemies of Islam come and pass through your lands and do whatever they wish. That's what they're thinking. Now Ibn Baz is in his grave. The blood of 600,000 people leaking in on him in his grave. May Allah forgive him. That's all we can say. May Allah forgive him. Apparently he voiced his regret for that later. Not sure how true that is though. I haven't heard that. If he did, then it should have been very well known. And of course, these are things that you can't wash your hands entirely off of. At the end of the day, Allah forgives who He wills, no matter how destructive their past may have been. Saddam Hussein was a tyrant, 100%. But that's beside them. I want us to stay on topic. Brother, I know it's a band-aid to the problem. Do you know any trusted charities to help the struggling people in Yemen, Syria, Gaza, so you could at least say something in front of Allah in the day of Qiyamah? If you have the resources that you want to give, there's the MATW projects. I do love the work that they're doing. So you can search. Because like this is very well trusted, because you see You see the people you know go out there. I'm very closely follow a social media figure by the name of Yahya Bouisse who works with them as well, and stuff like that. Of course, they're helping with the Ali Banat thing, right? Which is a huge charity foundation and stuff as well. So to be honest, if I was going anywhere, I would go to the MATW project over here. But at the end of the day, look, if we truly fear standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, seeing what we saw, doing what we did when the ummah was suffering, then it's not sufficient. In fact, it can be destructive for us to think that us giving money into these charity organizations is enough. Now, it can be something that, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you for good deeds. But if you're thinking about, okay, how can I be presentable to Allah? How can I save myself in front of Allah? How can I have a security thing in front of Allah that I will not be held accountable? Then this isn't going to answer it. Doesn't matter how much charity. What is going to answer it? It is your sincerity towards the liberation of these lands in the first place. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنِ اسْتَنْصَرُوكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ فَعَلَيْكُمُ النَّصْرُ, when the oppressed in your deen ask you for help, it is upon you to help. It doesn't mean help as in make them feel better. It doesn't mean help as in give them aid. What Nasr means over here, what Allah is commanding you to, is remove the conditions of oppression in the first place. Now, we ask ourselves the question, do the social media posts, do the charity money and humanitarian projects remove the source of the oppression in the first place? And the answer is, of course, they don't, right? Doesn't mean we don't post on social media. Of course we post on social media. Doesn't mean we don't give charity. Of course we give charity. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us reward us on the day of judgment for that. But what is upon us is to commit ourselves to the solution. And what is the solution? The solution is the unison of the Muslims in order to strategize for their strategize the resources towards them. Yes, we have in Surah Anfal the reference verse 72 in the chat as well. May Allah bless Brother Hudayfa. He's my teacher, by the way. He's my Quran teacher. I always say that whenever he's here, just so people know who he is. He does have a special place in the server. May Allah bless him. So this is, subhanallah, this is the problem of perpetual crisis the author is talking about. Why is it that we have There we go. You want me to highlight it? What the problem of perpetual crisis is? There you go. Let's copy and paste this in the chat too. The author, his entire goal now going on with this book is to solve this question. Because I'll tell you right now, all of you guys listening in over here, you can come up with so many conspiracy theories as many scholars, with quotation marks, scholars have done. Let me give you an example. The reason the Muslims are suffering so much and Gaza, Yemen, and India, and Syria, and all these other places, Somalia, the reason they're suffering so much is because you cannot fix yourself. Your major sins are causing suffering around the world. And they usually bring up some arbitrary hadith. Like the hadith, it's Israeliyat. So it's not really even truly a hadith if you take the definition. Musa alayhi salam making dua to Allah to remove a drought, and Allah saying, there is a sinner amongst you, and I will not remove the drought until he repents. So the sin of an individual caused the suffering of a population. That's the equation they make. The individual's sin, if somebody's sinning, making a major sin, like you, for example, then they're suffering abroad. Allah has made them suffer across the other end of the world. And they also bring up the verse in Surah Ar-Ra'd, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah does not change the state of a people until they change what is within themselves. So they use this verse and this hadith and they put the two together and say, look, if you do not fix your sins and your character, then suffering will not fix. And now I'm not saying that, continue sinning. I'm not pro-sin, like, just so people don't get it wrong. I'm not advocating for people to sin. But I'm saying this entire sentiment is wrong. There's no such belief in Islam that major sins cause collective suffering. Individual major sins cause collective suffering. There's correlations that the more major sin become prevalent, the more corruption that there is. Yes, 100%. But there's no causal link between an individual's sinning in private and all of a sudden some kids are being killed and starved or natural disasters hitting on the other side of the planet. And I'll tell you right now, if you go online, especially scholars from the Gulf area, like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the UAE, this is what they say. They say fix your aqidah and stop your major sins. And then the people in Gaza will be saved, and then the people in Yemen will be saved, and yada yada. This is what I mean, conspiracy theories. So this question, the problem of perpetual crisis, trust me, there are many conspiracy theories out there. Unfortunately, many of them also launched by Western regimes and media outlets. We as Muslims, we as an ummah, we as the slaves of Allah, we don't fall for these conspiracy theories. We seek the truthful answer. We seek the correct answer. Let me give you maybe a minute or two to type, think about it, the problem of perpetual crisis, what it means, what its solutions can be, what you've heard. And then after that, I will tell you what the author said. I had a question that is a bit unrelated. It's regarding prophets. So I was listening to Shaykh Yasir Qadi and he was telling how prophets had a wish that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 100% accepts. So why did they not make dua for destruction of kufr and shirk permanently? I'm not sure where he got that from. That all prophets had a wish, like one wish, that Allah will 100% accept. I mean, we know from the Quran that they did make dua against it for the destruction of kufr and shirk permanently. Like for example, the end of Surah Nuh, right? What does Nuh alayhi salam say? He makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ وَلِمَنْ دَخَلَ بَيْتِيَ مُؤْمِنًا وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ وَلَا تَزِدِ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا تَبَارًا. Let me see what they even translate this verse into. So I have to see, brother Ariq, what this belief is that every prophet had a dua that 100% gets accepted, because I don't know what the source for that is. But look, where are we? 72, 71, 71, 28. Increase the wrongdoers in destruction. The Prophet, peace be upon him, used pragmatic resources to spread Islam. It was only when he gets power that things changed. And the Muslim was the best during the Meccan phase, and yet they were delivering difficult. That's not fit for the life of the Prophet. Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. This conspiracy theory that they come up with is so anti-sirah. And you don't see it in the life of the Prophet ﷺ at all. The solution for the problem of perpetual crisis, or the reason for the problem of perpetual crisis, is division in the ummah and the absence of a caliphate. Okay. Moonlight problems, bought out scholars and imams. Okay, scholarship is the problem here. Did we allow corrupt people to rise to power, allow the agents to propagate their raised missions, and thereby bring this upon ourselves? That's a good question. Is colonization the fault of the colonizers solely? Or are the colonized to be blamed as well for being weak, for being fragile, for allowing themselves to be subdued? Both, I agree. I agree. The real solution, I think, is to unite as an ummah to establish khilafah and send armies towards these oppressors for all them to unite and establish khilafah. I like where this is going. I like that. And by the way, since this is stage as well, if you guys ever want to open your mic and talk, when I open for questions like these, you can just raise your hand and I can put you on the stage. If you guys ever want. Because I know typing, when I give some pretty big questions to you guys, and it can be difficult to type for such a long time. I can understand. So if you ever want to open your mic and answer these questions, then you can just raise your hand, pull up over here, and just voice it on voice call on the stage. But let's get back to these are some other conspiracy theories. Discord time limit is almost up. We should be finishing in 10 minutes anyways, inshallah. So I think we're good. So it's a qadr of Allah. Some people come up with the conspiracy theory, say, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this qadr, and we can't really do anything. If Allah decides to put humiliation on us and the suffering of others, then, what can we do? Yani? It's just a qadr of Allah. We sit by, we be patient, we just focus on your prayers. Right? That's one conspiracy theory. The second one is we fix ourselves, like I mentioned earlier. If you fix yourself, your aqidah, your major sins, your character, fix yourself, then these issues will be solved. We know that's another conspiracy theory. Another one is that we were colonized and subdued. That's another conspiracy theory, is because we were beat so bad. And you guys pretty much answered the question in the chat, like in different ways. Guys have different pieces, but you generally got the same thing. It's none of these things are the answer. When people say the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they don't understand the qadr of Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put causal relationships as well. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the hadith, we know when Jibreel alayhi salam was commanded to destroy a city, and he says, Ya Allah, there is a worshipper of yours in that city, a sincere worshipper. Allah said, start the destruction with that person. He did not enjoin good and forbid evil around him. He let corruption spread, and he focused on himself. Okay, Jazakallah, Brother Arif. I'm going to watch that video right after we're done over here, because we're finishing pretty soon. But then, yeah, I'll respond to you, inshallah, today. For sure, right after. If we fix ourselves, we answered that as well. There's no causal relationship. In fact, we know opposite. Because we're colonized and subdued. Of course, this is not... So what? Right? How could you allow yourself to be colonized and subdued in the first place? This is not an excuse. And as the brother was mentioning earlier, was Smiley's Aden, I believe? Yes. Aden. Aden was mentioning earlier, colonization, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. Just as the colonizers had to be strong enough to come and take over your land, you had to be weak enough. You had to be weak, fragmented, stagnated. Whose fault is that? And uh, Brother Noor is saying it's mostly our fault. Is it? Wait, I don't want to get the names mixed up. Yes, Brother Noor is saying it's mostly our fault. Like if you keep your door open in at night, some thieves steal some valuables, you can blame the thieves' morality and so on and so forth, but then it's your fault not closing the door. Exactly. Now, what is going to be more crucial, what is more central to the problem, is talking about scholarship. The author, and I want you guys to lock in over here for a second, okay? I know it's been brains firing off and stuff like that. Just for 5 minutes, stick with me about what I'm about to tell you guys over here. Because colonization is a two-way street, because just as the enemies of Islam had to plot and get stronger to attack us, and that we had to be weakened and fragmented, because that is the case, the author says, let's go back in time. Let's go all the way back to before we even started becoming weak and ask ourselves the question, what started it? What started it all? All of this destruction, everything that we're seeing over here. What was its beginning? And what I'm sharing with you on the screen, you guys can see this screenshot, right? Oh, Brother Furqan, nail on the head, mashallah. The banning of ijtihad. So let's read. This is the book called Tafkir by Shaykh Taqiyuddin Nabhani rahimahullah. The Islamic Ummah suffered in the 4th Hijri century. So we're talking 1100s, okay? From scholars who worked to suspend the thinking in the Ummah, and they announced the danger of thinking on the Ummah and its harm upon Islam and the Muslims. Anti-thought. Could you believe that? We read this stuff in the Orwellian dystopian novel 1981. We read this in our secular universities about the thought police coming after you and censoring you and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Almost 1,000 years ago, there was a movement, an entire movement in the Muslim Ummah. A band of scholars, like the famous scholar called Al-Qaffal, called for the suspending of the ijtihad, and they worked to prevent ijtihad. The Muslims believed this call and acted upon it. Thus, the scholars refrained from making ijtihad, and the thinkers were scared of doing ijtihad. Besides that the people hated the presence of the mujtahideen. The public opinion in all the lands of Islam adopted that view, and thus thinking was suspended, and the people were satisfied with taqleed only, and abolished thinking, and they no longer dared to. No, it's not the traditionalists that only take the traditional meaning, literal meaning. That's a separate group of people that come way later. These people that are closing the doors of ijtihad are entirely different than those traditionalists. Okay? Al-Qaffal and his band of people that started this movement in the 4th century Hijri, what was their reasoning? Their reasoning was as such. The Quran and Sunnah is with us. We have preserved it. We have the Hadith sciences. We have the 4 madhahib already synthesized. Hanafi madhab, the Maliki madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, and the Hanbali madhab. Why then do we need any thinking anymore? Isn't everything completed? We have the Quran, we have the Hadith sciences, we have the narrations, everything that authenticates it. We have the fiqh, we have the halal and haram. Therefore, anybody who continues thinking is just leading to bid'ah. Anybody that continues to try to come up with rulings is going outside of the fold of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Because we're completed. We have everything we need. That's their thinking process. And the worst part is they succeeded in convincing the Muslims that was true. They convinced the Muslim masses that because our Islamic sciences were preserved and completed, that we needed to suspend ijtihad. That we should no longer think outside of what is already thought for. That all of the masail of fiqh are already done. All of the halal and haram is already accounted for. So stop thinking. Wow. Now what did this lead to? And this is 4th century Hijri, by the way. This is, you read about Ibn al-Haytham, you read about Ibn Sina, Ibn al-Battani, Abbas al-Firnas, rahimahullah anhum ajma'in. The brightest minds, man, this ummah had. The same century, the same generation, I believe, or 1 or 2 generations apart at most. The seeds of stagnation were being planted during one of our greatest blooms. When we're talking about what's happening in the Muslim world right now, this right here is where it all started. What is the name of this? They didn't. I don't think they had a specific name. It just says Al-Qaffal was the one who led it. I don't know. And there's some details missing. This is, you can check the reference. You can open the book Tafkir, page 120. What did they gain by banning ijtihad? I mean, this wasn't a gain thing for them. This wasn't a material thing for them. They thought they were on the truth. They sincerely believed all of the halal and haram is already accounted for. That you don't need to do ijtihad anymore. Any mas'ala you come to me with, it's already been fixed before. You want to talk about lobsters, octopus, is eating octopus halal or haram? Guess what? Somebody already wrote about it. You want to talk to me about cotton footing versus leather footing? Well, hey, one of our scholars already talked about this, and you open, there's a meme that goes around. If you guys know, because Hanafi fiqh is the most synthesized school of thought within the 4 madhahib, meaning it had the most scholars with the most research, with the most amount of books published and stuff like that. Whenever any crazy question comes up, like for example, what is the ruling on furries saying this certain phrase or something, some crazy questions they come up with, astaghfirullah, and people say, oh, it's probably in the Hanafi books. Like, you open Hanafi book, go to page 393 of this scholar's book, you'll probably find something on furries. That was like an actual right, stuff like that. So that's why they believed. They didn't gain really anything by banning ijtihad. They sincerely believed that all of the fiqh is done. There's nothing left for fiqh. Obviously, they were wrong. Right? New technology, and what happens? New technologies come later on. 1485. The Gutenberg printing press comes out. What do they do to the Gutenberg printing press? New issue, new technologies. Nobody has ever in history given a fatwa on the printing press because it didn't exist. Nobody gave a fatwa on the printing press before. They banned it. You can look. I have the link on this over here. Shaykh al-Islam Zenbili Ali, one of the greatest scholars of the Ottoman Empire, issued a fatwa making the printing press haram. The Khalifa, the leader, Amirul Mu'mineen, Bayezid II, decreed a death penalty, an actual death penalty for anyone using the printing press. And then in 1515, Selim I, who's considered Suleiman the Magnificent for how vast he conquered in his expansion, he was the same Khalifa that reinstated the ruling on the death penalty for anyone that uses the printing press. Why? Why would they do such a thing? It's because they believed this is the work of shaitan. If you have the printing press, seeking knowledge becomes seeking knowledge is gonna be gone. Because what is seeking knowledge is all about the exhaustion. It's about the the hours you spend writing and copying notes and traveling long distances to seek knowledge. But the printing press, oh, you don't have to write anymore. You can just type way faster. And guess what? You can print. If you write it once, you can print 100,000 times. Wow. Okay, not really with the Gutenberg printing press. That came later on. Maybe that part's wrong, but hey, there is yeah, it can make mistakes if you do not manufacture it properly. Seeking knowledge, it dies out because it becomes so quantified. It's everywhere. There's no value in it anymore, right? They say the saying: if one person has gold in the whole city, it's the most expensive thing on the planet. But if everyone has gold, there's no value to it anymore because it's not scarce. They thought the same thing about knowledge. Because knowledge is so difficult to take, because knowledge is something that is so scarce, it's so valuable. But if the printing press comes and then takes that scarcity away and makes knowledge now widespread, it's everywhere, and everybody has the texts and everybody has the papers and can seek the knowledge, it's like, what's the value in knowledge anymore? That's their thinking. Subhanallah. But this is what happened. This is the result of over 400 years, or nearly 400 years, of banning ijtihad, of putting a ceiling on scholarship, saying that here's the limit and you cannot be smarter. You better not try to be smarter than this. Because if you become smarter than this, if you try to go into the realm of ijtihad, oh, you're going to have problems. You're going to have very big problems. Right? So, wow. Anyways, here's a quotation from Sheikh Saleh Al-Ghanim, and I'll end with this. The reason for the problem of perpetual crisis does not go beyond one of two matters. It is either the ignorance of those who are responsible for the Ummah's affairs in regarding to the meaning of Nahda and the way of achieving it, so they stumble. So pretty much there's two options as to why we haven't been able to revive. Either, number one, the scholars do not know what revival means, how to revive. By the way, if that's the case, why are they scholars? Can you call them a scholar if they don't know how to revive? If they don't know something so basic? If they don't know something that's so central to the deen? If they don't know that's the reason they're here for? Al-ulama'u warathatul anbiya, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, that they cannot lead the ummah to victory in a better place? Are they really truly scholars? That's one thing. Then the second option he gives is, well, but hey, maybe the scholars know how to revive. But he says they are agents to their masters, traders to their ummah, whose job is to tame the people and keep their lands a fertile ground, open mine, and vast market for their masters, who place them in positions of authority over the people. Brother Saleh, I joined late. Have you recorded this? Yes, this is recorded, inshallah. I'll upload this unlisted on my on one of my YouTube channels. And I'll link it over here in the announcement. I'll make a separate Discord channel Discord group, not group, category for all the recordings for the halaqas. But wow, look at this. Two options. Either the scholars are ignorant of revival, in which case you question whether or not they're really scholars, or the scholars know revival and how to revive, but they're traders. They just obey their secular Western masters. Obviously, the answer we believe is somewhere in between the two. But I personally believe it's more leaning towards the traitorous part, not in quantity. Like, I believe the vast majority of scholars are actually ignorant. But I do believe the destruction that brought about the problem of perpetual crisis was primarily done by sellouts. So the few scholars that were legit agents to these Western regimes were able to destroy so much. Madkhalis, what about them? Well, those ones obviously are the second, right? They're the agents, they're the sellouts. Madkhalis are those are the worst of the worst, unfortunately. This ayah that came to my mind may not be entirely applicable here, but I thought of واتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن ورهبانهم أربابا. I think you misquoted the verse. I don't think it says. Maybe it's in translation, like in brackets they say. 931. But I think we will end the recording here. This is the end of the session. Now there will be Q&A, but that will not be recorded for now, and it will be very short, inshallah, because I do have to go soon as well. So subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Inshallah, next week we will pick up on the rest of the book, Nahba, and see what the author had to say more about the idea of revival and how we can bring ourselves out of this situation. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen.